Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're thrilled to welcome to the program Winnipeg Jets forward Morgan Barron. Morgan, good morning. We're going to have to get you a red shirt so that you can match us for your next appearance on the program. This was unintentional just for the this was unintentional. This is just a happy coincidence. We don't normally coordinate our outfits, but great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, you too. You guys look good, so don't worry about it.
Where's offseason for you? Are you back in Nova Scotia, Morgan?
I am back in Nova Scotia, yeah.
Okay, so let's maybe start with that. The offseason, obviously the season ended with that dramatic defeat in Dallas, and we all remember the emotion that was going through that entire game and the entire team there. What has been sort of Morgan Barron's routine and life so far since that game came to an end?
Yeah, I think you kind of go through the process there. Obviously, like you said, it was real emotional. So, we stayed in Dallas there for the night and then traveled home. But, I think for all of us, it was kind of good to be together as a team in those moments and kind of be able to lean on each other and go through it together. I think pretty quickly after that, obviously, the disappointment settles in from losing and, a series that we all felt we were capable of winning and could have moved on. But since then, it's just been a little chaotic. I know we were in Winnipeg for maybe a week after the season, and then started the long journey home, and made the drive back to Nova Scotia, and then went out and visited my girlfriend's family in Oregon. So it's been really busy. It's obviously we all wish we were still playing, and we've kind of been able to keep up and watch some of the games since then. But it's like you said, it was pretty emotional. So it was kind of a different ending to the season than what we would have liked, but also than what was normal.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about there, Morgan. The sort of the disappointment this year. Anytime you don't win the Stanley Cup, there's an element of disappointment. But how did the end of the season feel different from this year versus the last couple of years, let's say?
Yeah, I think this year was a great example of kind of the roller coaster that the playoffs can be. Obviously, to win that first series against St. Louis in the dramatic fashion that it ended, I think everyone was really riding a high from that and felt really good going into that Dallas series. And then, we had some moments in that Dallas series where I thought we were playing really good hockey. Obviously, we were able to win a few games, and especially that last game in Dallas, it felt like we were right there. Obviously, it comes down to an overtime goal, and I think it's obviously a step in the right direction to advance past that first round. We haven't been able to get past that since I've been there. But it's like you said, especially after winning the President's Trophy and kind of having the regular season that we did, I think everybody in that room wholeheartedly felt that we had a chance to go on and really still be playing right now and have a chance at winning the Cup. So, you take a lot of the same things from it as you would another season. It's like you said before, anytime you don't win the Stanley Cup, I think there's things that you can improve on and there's ways you have to get better. But, I think it's been a good evaluation process for everybody so far to look back and realize how we can get better for next season.
Morgan, just sticking with that, you just mentioned, obviously, it's a disappointment that you guys weren't able to go to the Stanley Cup final, and you mentioned the President's Trophy and the emotional roller coaster. Like, now that it's been, even though you said it's been a whirlwind for you since the season ended, like, have you had a lot of time to kind of reflect on just how amazing of a season it was for you guys, right? Like, just mentioned it, winning the President's Trophy, the 15-1 start, almost getting to the conference final. Like, have you spent a lot of time just thinking about how much you guys accomplished this year?
To be honest with you, not a whole lot of that yet. I think kind of as time passes, that's something that happens more. But, to me, it still kind of feels like a fresh wound, to be honest, especially when there's other games going on, when you see in the background that, Edmonton and Florida are still playing. I think you still have those feelings of, I wish that was us, that should be us, so on and so forth. So, there's definitely been a few quick moments where you think back to the good moments of the season and all that we were able to accomplish. But, at the end of the day, the goal is the same for everybody. I think it's advancing in a few more rounds and having a chance to win that Cup. So there'll definitely be some positives we take out of it. But at least personally, I still feel like it's, until that Cup is handed out this year, then maybe we can reflect on the positive parts of it. But right now it's still, a lot of feelings that I wish we were still playing.
Morgan, what was it like working with Scott Arniel as his first year as the head coach? I mean, obviously you knew him as an associate coach with the organization, but that's in a different capacity. We know he had a great season, a Jack Adams nominee, but what was it like for you kind of changing that relationship with him and being under him as a head coach?
It was great. I think with Arnie, he's real genuine, and kind of, the pieces we saw of him kind of as an associate coach, and he had stints as kind of running the bench there last season or two seasons ago when Bones was away. But, I think what you see is what you get with him. You know what kind of person he is, you know what he expects. And to me, it felt quite seamless for him to step into that role. I think the results speak for themselves, the way he was kind of able to lead us throughout the year. And obviously, you talk about the Jack Adams nomination, like all those accolades are there. But just having him in that role, I think, was real good. He was really able to steady the ship at different times during the year when we needed it. And, even though obviously with everything that went on with Scheif and his father passing there in that last game, I think that was a real moment where, his leadership and really the leadership throughout the whole organization showed, and, his ability to kind of steady the ship and have us go out and play the game that we did. And again, I know the results weren't there. We didn't get the win, but to see the way Scheif performed in that game and the way a lot of guys stepped up in a real emotional time, I think that's kind of a testament to his ability to lead a group of men.
Morgan Barron is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Now, Morgan, all season long, we've heard that, it was a really tight-knit group in the dressing room, that you guys were, it was almost unique in the culture and the connectivity in that room. Having been in so many different dressing rooms over the course of your playing career, both at the NHL level and in your formative years, did it feel different in that room than just your average dressing room? Was that lip service, or was that truly something that that feeling resonated in the room to that effect?
I think it's funny you say lip service. I think you can probably ask anybody in the league and they say they have a special group and everyone's truly close knit. But I do really think there is something special about it. I think when you look at the core that's been in Winnipeg, it's been fairly consistent. The guys who have been drafted or been traded here, everybody seems to want to stay. And especially it was cool to see a lot of those guys sign extensions kind of before the playoffs started. I think it speaks to the group that we have. All the guys who are there when I got there and through the last 3 years, I think it's a testament to them and their ability to kind of bring guys in and make everybody feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, make guys want to play for each other. It's pretty special to be a part of that. And, that all shows on the ice, but then there's a lot of stuff you guys don't see off the ice of guys being together and just genuinely enjoying each other's presence at the rink. I think when you talk about reflecting on the year, it was fun for me to go to the rink every day. It was fun to show up and be around the guys, be around the coaches. And I think that's something that, obviously comes with winning, but, it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation where, you win more as a result of that, but also, the other way around. When you're winning, that's obviously going to be the result. So it's been great. Really enjoyed it, and I'm already excited to get moving again and see the guys soon, hopefully. It
was fun to cover you guys as well, Morgan, with all that winning and the playoff run. I mean, I think I speak for Drew and Dave and pretty much everyone watching or listening on the podcast that we're thinking what you're thinking. We wanted the season to keep going, and we wanted you guys to be playing the Oilers in the conference final. I wanted to ask you about center versus wing, because obviously you played both this year, and I'm sure you would admit that you're going to play wherever the coaching staff asks you to play. But I just wanted to get your personal opinion, because we talk a lot about you moving from wing to center, and it's obviously you made the transition look easy. You were very good up the middle. What do you prefer playing? Like, what are the things that you like playing about center versus playing wing, maybe?
I think I think most teams now, the system is often quite similar. I think obviously you get in different situations depending on what you're playing, but to me, I think center is, it's a lot of battles on the face-off dot rather than kind of boards battles so much, the other big difference is kind of, I think we revert back to those positions coming back into the D zone, but there's also a certain flexibility of, if someone is the first guy back and I'm the third guy back on the back check, ultimately we kind of just fill spots. So, I think part of the transition for me and ease of it, I guess, as you put it. That kind of came with our system, you know, and the guys I was playing with and all that. Playing with smart players and playing the system where everybody's committed to it, I think that makes it a lot easier. You know, obviously enjoyed taking the face-offs. To me, that was a part that was fun, and I had taken a lot in college and through the American League, especially before being traded from New York. I played a lot of center in Hartford, so that was kind of part of the game that I did miss. And I guess you talk about adjustments. I think that was a big one, where especially at the start, you know, you're taking face-offs against a lot of guys who have been doing it for 10 years in the league, right? And I've kind of taken a little hiatus from it, I guess, and then kind of were thrown back into the fire. But that was something I enjoyed doing. Obviously, you know, I do enjoy playing in the middle, but it's kind of like you said. I think kind of when you're playing on a team, you know, it's been as successful as the Jets have for the past few years. I think everybody's just committed to filling the roles and doing whatever is needed for the group to move forward. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking as we move forward. And you know, hopefully as the offseason moves along, I'm sure I'll get a little bit of clarity as to what's going to happen. But you know, cards are kind of off the table once the season starts, with injuries and trades and all the things that happen. So we'll take the punches as they come and roll with it.
You know, Morgan, you mentioned some of your teammates signing extensions this season. You are an RFA with arbitration rights this summer. What's that like for you? I mean, Drew said you might be breaking news for us on the show. You're welcome to do so. But just from your perspective, what is that process like? Are you involved, or you just kind of leave it to your agent?
No, it's mostly to the agent. I do not have any news to break at the moment. So I think that's something I think that's what you pay your agents for. That's their job. They're obviously good at it. And, you know, as the summer progresses, I'm sure I'll have more clarity, and maybe one of these days I will have news to break on here. But I think it's still early, especially when teams are still playing. I think, you know, the process probably moves a little bit slower than people think sometimes, or maybe it's moving quicker in the background. I have no idea, but that's how uninvolved I guess I am, and I think most players are. You kind of leave it to your agent, and then as things kind of move along and deadlines start to show up for all the different things that happen over the summer, that's kind of when things seem to start moving.
Morgan Barron, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Last year, when the season ended, the talk was 10 or 15% better. Everybody had to find that extra 10 or 15%, and you guys certainly found that during the regular season and even in the playoffs, getting past that first round, as you mentioned. What's the focus of this off season? Maybe both as a collective and individually for Morgan Barron himself.
You know, I think it's going to be a lot of the same, like you say, 10 or 15% better. I think that's going to be probably the goal again, is kind of getting through that and taking that next step, like we talked about, I think, as a team. You know, to me, the prior two seasons before this one, the playoff runs felt quite similar. Obviously, you look at the trend in winning that game one and then losing the next four. You know, I think that was something that really left a bad taste in our mouths when it happened. But that 10 or 15%, I guess, this year was getting through that first round and kind of giving ourselves a chance to advance. And that's going to be the focus again. And I don't think it's as simple as being satisfied that we took one step. I think it's about taking the next step and the next step. So, you know, as things move along this off season, I think we'll probably get chances to kind of connect with the coaches and see what that focus is. And then, you know, for me, I think it's, you know, first and foremost, everybody's always banged up, and kind of getting healthy, getting back in the gym and get moving. And then, you know, we'll be on the ice here pretty shortly and kind of working on all the skills that you don't want to say you lose them during the year, but I think the summer's a great chance to refine all those things and kind of work on your individual skills and find ways to apply them. So I think it'll be a good off season for me and all the guys, and we'll kind of hit that ground running another 10, 15%, like you said.
I'm always curious to know, Morgan, if how much hockey players are watching when they're not playing hockey. I just wanted to ask you how much of the conference final, either of the conference finals, you watched, Dallas or Edmonton, or obviously Florida, Carolina, but specifically the first two games. We were talking about it before you came on. You know, obviously both games going to overtime, but like, how much of these games are you watching? Will you watch a full game, or will you just watch part of it or highlights? I think it's really fascinating to know, like, if what players are doing when they're not playing.
Yeah, if I'm being honest with you, the time zone out here kills me for watching the games now. We get 9 p.m. puck drops, and then, you know, obviously now that we're back in the gym and working out again, that morning comes pretty quick. So I was able to get through 2 periods last night and then kind of watch the third and some of the highlights of overtime this morning. But yeah, I'd like them to move those puck drops up. Would be great for me. But
how'd your family handle the how'd your family handle the 9 o'clock Winnipeg puck drops during the playoffs then?
Oh, crazy. I mean, even my poor grandmother's always staying up to watch the games. And even on the West Coast, you know, some of those 7:30 local LA puck drops is 11:30 o'clock. She's up staying to watch the game. So I always tell them just set the DVR and watch it in the morning. But, you know, I don't think my dad can sleep if he knows the game's going on. So, yeah, but we'll obviously watch it and do what we can, but, you know, not to the detriment of our own training and sleep schedules is kind of how I feel about it.
You know, Morgan, you mentioned LA, which segues nicely for me to a good friend of yours, Jeff Malott. And, you know, one thing for you guys is that you want these guys to get the opportunities within the organization, but if they can't, to be able to go on and blossom with someone else. What does it mean for you, for a guy you've obviously been friends with since your Cornell days, to be able to see Jeff, you know, go get that opportunity with the LA Kings and then run with it and get in some playoff games with them?
Yeah, it was awesome. Obviously, I had the opportunity to play against him, you know, towards the end of the season there. And, you know, I hadn't seen many of his games kind of prior to that. I haven't been able to watch them, but seeing his opportunity to play, and I thought he played phenomenal in that game against us. I thought their line was really effective, and was able to see some of his clips and stuff in the playoffs as well. And I know, kind of similar, he scored a goal that got called back on him there at the end.
Terrible.
Which is too bad, but you know, I think that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, obviously he's had to work really hard to get into the position. You know, I remember talking with my Cornell coach. I think he signed his AHL deal originally with the Moose, and everyone was just kind of blown away that, you know, that was what he ended up getting coming out of school, and I think surprised. And then ultimately he got his NHL deal with Winnipeg, and you know, I remember he got into a few games there just prior to me getting traded, and then same thing, went back down, and you know, his ability to be a mentor down with the Moose and his ability to continue to play, and then, you know, I figured, at least to me, knowing him and knowing the type of player he is, it was just a matter of time before I think someone saw that ability he has, and you know, the character's obviously there as well. And, you know, I'm really happy for him and his opportunity to run that, or his opportunity that he ran with the Kings. And I'm sure this is kind of just the beginning of the runway for him. So really happy of him, and obviously really proud of him.
Morgan, you mentioned you're going to be back on the ice soon, and you're going to be working with your, you know, skills coach and everything else. What are you looking to sort of work and fine tune in your game this off season, entering into training camp? Is there one area in particular you're working at, or just more your broad range of skills?
I think it always kind of starts as broad range, and then you kind of fine tune things. You know, I think in the past it's been a lot of skating and kind of building power and a good base in the gym. And obviously that's something that continues to be a focus, but I do feel like that's something that's kind of become a strength of my game now, is trying to use my speed and, you know, my ability to protect pucks, things like that. So, you know, I'd like to work on some of the finer tuning things around the net, you know, stick handling, the passing, all the basic stuff. But, you know, I think it'll be, you know, for me, I think you kind of continue to evolve your game throughout the years. You kind of add one or two skills and really get them down every week or every month of the summer, and keep adding to that repertoire. So, you know, I think you kind of complement the things in the gym and getting stronger with those abilities on the ice.
Well, we wanted to ask you about Rasmus Kupari. We were speaking about him earlier. He obviously signs the deal in Switzerland, but he's a guy that you've played with the last couple years, and I imagine you've developed a friendship. We always talk about you know, the speed with Rasmus Kupari. What kind of stands out for you? And I'm obviously, you know, I can't speak for you, but I'm sure that, you know, all the boys are you know, wishing him well in Switzerland. But what kind of stands out to you about playing with Rasmus over the last couple of years?
Yeah, Rasmus was great. I think, you know, the speed is the first thing. He's honestly one of the best skaters, you know, I've ever had the ability to play with. I think, you know, obviously his straight line speed is the first thing that stands out to you, but also his ability to, you know, cut a corner and do a cutback and continue to hold his speed through that. You know, that was the thing that I remember first stood out to me with him. And, you know, I think he's kind of got all the tools, and you've seen him put it together, you know, as the seasons have gone on. So, you know, I don't know the details or anything of his deal. I obviously kind of expected him to be back in Winnipeg, but, you know, the decisions he makes, I think, are for the whatever he feels is best for him and his family. And
Right.
the other thing I'd say is also you never know where things go kind of over time. So obviously I'll miss him a lot in Winnipeg if he's ending up in Switzerland for the season. But, you just hope guys like that are continuing to be happy and be around family and friends. And, I'm sure he'll have a ton of success over there for however long he's there.
Morgan, you don't obviously listen to the goal calls when you're playing the game. Maybe you watch the highlights after the fact. I have a question for you. Do you think Dan Robertson gives you a little Atlantic Canada boost when he's making when he's making your goal calls rather than everybody else is on the team? And I love Dan. Dan's great, but I always think there's a little extra flair when you score versus someone else who's not from Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly appreciated it if that's the case. I remember he actually called my brother's first NHL goal with Montreal because he was working previously with the Habs. And I know some guys are really kind of in the weeds with who's calling who, and who's called the Rangers or who's called the Kings or whoever for years or decades or whatever it is. And I just hadn't kept up with it. I don't know who the guys are. I recognize some of their voices, but I remember watching kind of the highlight of my brother's goal and being like, wow, that was a phenomenal call. I thought that was fantastic. And then of course finding out it was Dan, and that was kind of my introduction to him. And then we hired him in Winnipeg, and I think he does a great job calling the games. Obviously I missed a few this year being injured, and you kind of get to watch some of the games sometimes down below on the TV and hear his calls. So it's actually quite neat to hear them and obviously get a chance to chat with him and stuff in the dressing room. Every once in a while, he'll bring up something about back home. So it's always a nice taste of home when I do get to kind of chat with him.
Last one for you, Morgan. We've been doing this for, far too many years, to be perfectly honest. That Game 7, the comeback is a seminal moment for hockey fans in Winnipeg, and will live on for lore for decades to come. What was it like, being at ice level, the mood in the room after the buzzer sounds to go into overtime? Just sort of walk us through that emotional roller coaster that was the ending of regulation in Game 7 and then the OT winner.
Yeah, it was really special. I think you look at the way that everything shake down, and to me, I think when those guys go out there and we're down 2, I probably had similar thoughts to everyone else kind of in the building, like, oh, this isn't looking good. And, then you get the first one and it's like, okay, one goal with the goalie pulled, and let's see what can happen here. And then all of a sudden you get the second one. And, to me, it almost felt like we were given a second life. It felt like things were trending really in the wrong direction. And all of a sudden you have all the momentum, you're going to the room, everyone's so fired up. And, at least to me and to what it felt like, the energy around the rooms, it didn't feel like there was a chance we were losing that game at that point. I think Helly had made some huge saves kind of coming down the stretch there in that game. And, obviously to get those 2 goals and head into overtime and the momentum in the rink, like all that stuff really, really carries a lot of weight. And then obviously the overtime goal and the mood in the dressing room was just, I think the energy that you guys kind of saw in the rink carried right through everybody into the dressing room after the game. And honestly, I think the moment off the ice that I'll always remember is, getting in the car and driving home. And I had one of my good friends was, at the game, and my girlfriend, and just getting in the car and getting onto Portage. And I think it was hour and a half after the game, and the streets were still packed. Like people were honking their horns, walking, waving their flags, screaming. Like it was absolutely banana lands out there. So I think that was a great moment for me to kind of see, what that moment meant for the city and how involved and you already know how passionate all the fans are, but I guess just kind of the weight that carries, throughout the community. And, that's obviously been the moment I've been asked about the most from people in Winnipeg or people back home who are watching the game. Everyone wants to know what Game 7 was like. And, it's certainly a game and some moments that I'll always remember, as what I'm guessing will be one of the highlights of my career when it's all said and done.
Morgan Barron, Winnipeg Jets forward. Time will tell if it's a centerman or as a winger. We'll let you and the coaching staff figure that part out. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Morgan. Have a great rest of your off season. it'll be September and training camp before we know it, but I hope you get some time for yourself and your family and your girlfriend and relax a little bit and everything else. We appreciate you joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for taking the time, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
We'll see you soon.
Morgan.
Thanks, Morgan. Take care. There he goes, Morgan Barron joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Got to get him a red shirt, Drew.
We'll get him a red shirt. We'll get him a red Illegal Curve shirt. No question about that. We'll go to break. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about that interview, much more about the Jets. That was just great. It was really a treat to sit down with Morgan right there. Don't go anywhere. Much more of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show set to come. We'll discuss the interview that we just ran with Morgan.